A very warm welcome to everybody that's joined this morning. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I'm Laura Clarkson, so I'm the partner that heads up our healthcare sort of offering within Mazar. And today I'm joined by regulars on these events, Kelsey and Lee. Unusually today we're all sitting in the same room, so hopefully we will remember to mute ourselves between speaking. And it's a regular webinar that we're running because, quite frankly, lots of you seem to still be very interested in our sort of back to basics refresher on Xero. We do hope to broaden this out and have cover some other topics in future webinars relating to Xero. So please do give us your thoughts as we're going through the webinar, any additional things that you would find helpful for us to cover in relation to Xero, please just pop them in the chat and we'll gather those for our next sort of series of webinars. Please do use the Q&A as we are going through this for any questions, and we'll either try to answer them as we go or we'll cover them at the end. We've got 45 minutes set aside this morning, which hopefully will be plenty of time to cover everything. So I think without further ado, I will be handing over to Kelsey.
Morning everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm just going to share my screen with you and then we can then get started. So hopefully everyone can see that. So the first thing I'm going to cover is just your bank feeds. So for me, bank feeds is one of the main benefits of Xero. So what this means is you can link your bank to Xero, meaning that your transactions flow through from your online banking into Xero, therefore you're not needing to manually enter your transactions. So to do this, what you do is you would click Get Bank Feeds. This would then open up a new screen. You would then log into your online banking account. There'll then be step-by-step instructions on how you then link your bank feeds. So things like when you want your bank feeds to start from. So if you're a March year end, you'd want these to start from the 1st of April. You would then have them all linked. Once they're linked, it then just means your transactions are flowing through from your bank into Xero. Again, not needing to then manually enter your transactions. So once I've got these all linked up, like I say, your transactions will link through, and then you can then start reconciling your items. So if you're not sure if your bank is linkable with Xero, then there is an extensive list on the Xero website which says which banks are compatible with bank feeds. It also then lets you know if there's any known issues with banking feeds. So if there's maybe a issue on the bank side or Xero side, they will let you know just so that you're aware of the situation, and they'll also give you updates on when things are going to be fixed. You can link as many banks as you want, so you can have savings account, loans, credit cards, all within your Xero, and you can also have different providers. So if you're with RBS and Santander, you can have these both linked on your Xero at the one time. So to reconcile your items, you would just click here where it says reconcile items. And then it then pulls through all of your transactions. So down the left-hand side is essentially just your online bank statement. And then down the right-hand side is then how we reconcile this. So the first one here, we've got SPPA. So you would then just reconcile this like how you have done in the past. You would say who it is, so you could type in what it is. So here we would say this was for pension contributions. Type what you were looking for, press OK, and then from here all you need to do is press this little OK in the middle, and then that's that one reconciled. So the good thing with Xero is it starts to remember where you have previously coded things in the past, and to do that all you need to do is scroll to the bottom of your page and then tick this little box here that says suggest previous entries. Once you've done that, it then shows up how you've previously coded things in the past. Again, just saving yourself a little bit of time. So all you would do is you would just work your way down your bank feed, reconciling each item as they come. So this next one is for drawings. So we can see here this has been a bulk payment. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this out. So it's previously been done before. So at the moment it says keep as 2 lines. I'm going to click that. This then opens up an additional box. And then from here, I can then split out the total £25,000 by splitting it to each individual partner. So I could have Dr. A having a set amount. So I'm going to have the description as Dr. A, quantity is 1, and then I'm just going to change the unit price. So I can change this to £10,000, tab that along. Now, because I've previously coded it to Dr. A, it's going to his John's code. There's no VAT, and then the amount is £10,000. I'm then going to go down to Dr. B. Again, keeping the quantity as 1. The unit price for this one, we can say is 15,000. Going to the Dr. B John's, no VAT. So I can then see here my total is 25,000, matching the total of £25,000 here. Save the transaction. It's went green because they both match, and I can now press OK to reconcile that item. So the next one to show you is for an income. So Lee will cover this in more detail in a little bit later on. But to reconcile the income, again, you can either just do the same way by saying it's for Digby Brown. If you don't use the invoicing sections, we put this to insurance exams. And then if you want, you can say a little description of what it was for, if it was copy notes or medical reports, etc. If you do use the invoicing function, which Lee will show you, what you can do is you can match it to certain invoices. So you would just click match. This will then open up all of the invoices that you've created within Xero, and then you can then select which invoice this relates to. So we don't have an invoice relating to this transaction at the moment, but if we did, you would just select which one it was, press OK, and then reconcile it that way. So I'll just cancel that one. The next thing I'm wanting to cover is the bank rules. So for things like this SPPA one, for instance, if you've got things like SPPA, PYE, etc., that you know you're paying every single month, you can set up a rule, and it just means that any time it hits 0, it's going to automatically apply the rule. So then it looks a bit like this. It says apply rule. I've already got one for the HMRC. And then all you're then having to do is press OK again, just saving you a little bit of time. So to set up a rule, you just click Options, Create Bank Rule, and then from here it then opens up more boxes. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to apply it to any of the following conditions. So I've got description equals SPPA. What I'm actually wanting to do is description and then contains SPPA. Now, the reason I'm saying contains is because often in online banking statements, there's random numbers at the end of the transaction, and this is just a sequence that is generated by the bank. However, if I've said that that equals SPP and then the random numbers, if it doesn't have these exact numbers, it won't apply your bank rule. So what I'm wanting to change this to is contains, and then delete out the random numbers and just have it as contains SPPA, just so that it's always applying that rule. We're then wanting to set the contact, so this will be SPPA. And then down here, we're then just going to apply where this is going to be coded. So description, we can, again, SPPA, or you can call it pension contributions, whatever you want. Your account, so I put this to pension contributions, again, no VAT, and we want 100% of it going to this code. We want just set the reference by me during bank rec, and then we're wanting to apply it to our current account. So we can apply it to all bank accounts, however, SPP is only being paid from our current account, so we're just going to do it that way. We're going to save this, and then it then pulls through to your bank rec. So then anytime it now comes up on your bank, all you have to do is press OK, and then that's that item reconciled. So the next one I'm wanting to cover is your NHS statement. So there's a few ways in which you can reconcile this. If I just find it. So I've got here. So again, there's a few ways on how you can reconcile this. So again, you can do it just the one code. You can then simply break it down. Again, add in details. And then you would then simply just copy your NHS statement. So going down it, changing this to global sum, your quantity, the amount, account, you would put as global sum, etc. So that's one way you can do it. And then again, if you have your suggested entries ticked, then it will then keep as your lines as what is done before, and then you would just need to keep adding and deleting lines per your statement. You can also create an invoice. Again, we will cover this with you later on and how you do that. So there's a few different ways for creating your NHS income. It's up to yourself if you do want to break it down, or if you want to put it as a one code thing, it's not an issue. So once we've then got everything reconciled, we then want to make sure that the bank statement matches your Xero. So to do that, you would then scroll to the top. So here, your statement and your balance in Xero should be the same, obviously once everything's reconciled. If there is a difference, what we're wanting to do is go to our bank statements tab, click in here, and then from here, we then just want to check our balance to our statement. So if your statement balance is different, you would then just have a quick look through your transactions to see if there's anything that's maybe different. So from here, I can see that I've got a couple duplicate transactions. Now, it's not often that it happens. However, sometimes this can happen at IT where the transactions will pull through twice. Now, it doesn't mean that these have been paid twice. It just means that there's been a slight issue and that it's pulled through twice. So if this does happen, all you need to do is click this little box here and then press delete. That will then delete the statement line, and then it's got rid of it from your Xero. If you accidentally delete something that you didn't mean to, you just click the box again and then restore it. So anything that has been done can be undone or redone. It's not an issue at all. If you're not comfortable doing it, then please just get in touch with someone and then they can let you know if that's done correctly. Again, another benefit of Xero is it being cloud software, so your accountants can then just jump on at any time to give you a little helping hand. So once you've got everything up and running and you're happy with your bank and it's reconciled, then we can then just take it from there. The last thing I would want to say about your bank feeds and your reconciliations, etc., is that for bank feeds, they need to be renewed every 90 days. And this is just for an added layer of security. So just to make sure that you're happy for your information to flow from your bank into Xero and it's all just good to go. So I'm just going to touch on the chart of accounts quickly. So to get to that, you just go accounting, down to chart of accounts. And then from here, it'll then give you a list of accounts that you've got in Xero. So your chart of accounts is very important. Now, the bog standard ones you get from Xero are not particularly great for medical practice, as it's not got your NHS incomes or anything like that. So if there is anything that you're unsure of how to do, then please again get in touch with someone. I know that we give an extensive list of codes to our clients, so it is something to speak to your accountant about getting that up and running so that you've got the best possible codes for your practice. If there is a code that's maybe needing added, because obviously NHS statements, they change their coding all the time, you can simply do that by going add account and then just typing it in here. So if it was an income, you put it to revenue. If an expense, put an overhead. You would then put the code in. So you would just find a suitable code that's available, and then you would then just say what you want in this code to be. You would then save the code, and then you can then start using that for your reconciliations. Or you can simply go on and edit any of the codes that have already been there. So if you want to change it from telephone, you can change that to telephone / mobile, for instance, and then save that, and then that's then been updated on your chart of accounts. So I think that's me covered the majority of everything I was supposed to cover. If you do have any questions, then please pop them in the chat, and then I'm going to hand over to Lee. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey. Just answering a couple of questions that are coming through already on there, so thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen with you, and we will look at we'll look at some invoicing and a little bit further into Xero in terms of if you're using a standard license on Xero and you are raising invoices and maybe using the bills section. So as Kelsey said, you know, that was a bit of a run through on your reconciliations. On how to get your bank feeds in and reconcile that information. Please keep your questions coming. We'll try and answer them as we go, but we'll have some time at the end as well where we can run through some Q&A as well. Okay, yeah. So as Kelsey said, I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail in terms of invoices and bills. Now, I know not all GP practices use this functionality, but for those of you that do, there are some shortcuts and some hints and tips that may come in handy for you. All right. So essentially, we'll start with your PCSE statement. I know, especially in England, it's a little bit convoluted, and you tend to receive two payments in the bank, but you only get one PCSE statement, and then you may even get little add-ons on a remittance and things like that, and it can become a little bit frustrating, a little bit complicated. So what I wanted to do was just run through a repeated invoice for you, which kind of builds a template for your PCSE statement, which you can then match to the payments that you've received in the bank. And also maybe, you can then start to look at the invoicing functionality to actually email out, if you're renting a room and you want to email different people, you can use Xero as your kind of invoicing functionality. Okay, so what I want to show you, if you look at your practice name in the top left of your Xero, and you click on that, down there you will have settings. And now this is primarily if you are going to use Xero as invoicing functionality that you want to send out to your suppliers or the people that you've done work for. And essentially what you've got there is your invoice settings function. Xero gives you a standard invoice template, which I think is fine. You can edit that template here under options. You can edit it. You can put your terms and conditions. You can add a logo in there and things like that. And also you can change default settings and invoice reminders. So you can set Xero up to automatically email out after 30 days if you've not cleared that money in your Xero dashboard, you've not had that money in your bank, because you need to remember that the management of this is down to you. So if you are raising invoices, etc., they will show on your dashboard here, and it's then up to you to reconcile them. Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. Let's start with just a basic kind of invoice that you want to set up from your dashboard, a one-off invoice that you may want to raise. Now, you can do this for your NHS work. It's a retrospective invoice because you still need to fill in your claims forms. You can't use Xero to email the claims forms or SBS or anybody like that, unfortunately. But it's not to say that you can't raise them on Xero, which kind of gives you an idea of tracking income a little bit as well, which may help you do that. So to raise a one-off invoice, very, very simple. Just click on your dashboard in invoices over to you here, click on new sales invoice. That will open up the invoice page. And here you can just formulate what you need to put in here. Okay, so if it was NHS England or somebody like that, you can pop that in, the issue date, the due date, an invoice number, and a reference that's set to yourself. The branding theme that is automatically brought in is standard. If you've set your own branding theme, you can click there and change your branding theme. For those of you that do have things like Stripe set up, or if you want to do that, you can set up online payments. I'm not going to cover that today, but that option is there. Just remember there will be a charge for that with whoever you use. But in here, essentially what you can do, pop in your description. Your quantity would be 1, the price of the invoice that you're raising, and then for this particular one, it might be something like rent that you've done some other rent or some pharmacy rent or something like that. If you are emailing this out, you've got the option to then approve an email here. If you've set up whoever the invoice is for as a contact, which you can do at this point here, if it's brand new and you were setting this up, it gives you the option to do that. And you can put in an email address. You can then approve and email that. So essentially what you're doing is you're approving the invoice to sit on your dashboard and then emailing that invoice out to the appropriate people. like I say, most of the time you won't be emailing this out, I imagine. So if that's the case, you click on your little arrow next to it and you just click approve. And what happens then? This sets here as approved. You can, if you wanted to print that, you can. You can then attach, if you do have paperwork, you can attach that by uploading it. If you do have two screens, you can just simply drag and drop into this screen and it will automatically upload the invoice into, or the paperwork into that invoice there. If we then go back to your dashboard, what you have now is an additional payment. If you go into your waiting payments for invoices here, you can see we've got that 3,000 there that we've just set up. The invoice numbers kind of just run on one after the other. You can set that up. If you were to pick that up mid-year and you wanted to continue your invoice number, then your first invoice that you set up, you would just change that number. But obviously that's picked that up there. That is now waiting for you to reconcile it in Xero. So we've set one up here previously down at the bottom for the 4453. If I was to click on that and open it up, you will see how that invoice looks. So again, you're doing your coding work when you set that invoice up. So this invoice has been set up across multiple accounts in your chart of accounts. Again, that's usually the case with your NHS income, isn't it? Where you have more than one income stream in there. So you can break that down. The total invoice is there. That is sat in awaiting payment. If we then go into reconcile, because it's a one-off invoice and it's one figure, and that figure will generate in your bank, then Xero can find that. So Xero has already it's matched up the Northtown invoice with the payment that you've received. If you're happy that all of those little references are correct and that is accurate, then you simply click OK and confirm. And what happens then, obviously your reconcile number comes down. But if I go back to your dashboard, that awaiting payment number has reduced from 7 to 6 because that has now gone into paid. So you know that invoice has been received and you've cleared it out of Xero. And that can work, as I say, if you are invoicing externally for any reason, it will show you what money you still owed. And again, it's the management. You've got to make sure that you're reconciling that information on a regular basis and keeping that as accurate and as up to date as you possibly can. So yeah, that's a very simple sales invoice. It can be set up for anything, you know, your private fee work or anything like that. You can use that. But what I wanted to show you was the PCSE statement, or the health board statement that you have for your monthly payments, your monthly income statements. And what we can do here, along the top of Xero, you've got business. And along at the bottom of there, you have your invoices overview. So we can click into that. This shows you an overview of all the invoices that you've raised, and you can look at them individually. Draft invoices, those awaiting approval, those awaiting payment, those that have been paid, and you can see at the end you've got repeating. And that's where what we're going to look at now, a repeating invoice. To create a repeating invoice, you can do this from this page also. You've got new invoice, little drop down, and you've got new repeating invoice. So if we open that page there, it gives you a few options. So what we want to do, we want to repeat this every month. So once every month, and you can choose the invoice date, which tends to be either the middle of the month or the end of the month. Okay, so we set that date up as there. What I then do here on the due date, because it's quite different in terms of you don't know what you're going to get on that invoice until you actually see your PCSE statement. So it is a retrospective. It's more of a template. You can just say, this is due 2 days after the invoice date, for example. Okay, because essentially that's when you're going to clear it once that money hits your bank. There'll be no end date. The invoice, again, NHS England or Health Board Scotland or anything like that, you can pop that in there. The reference is up to you, PCSE. And again, you don't have to worry about the branding because we're not sending this anywhere. But what we are going to do now is set up a template. So you can go down here, and as Kelsey touched on earlier in terms of the add details and breaking down that payment, that individual amount, you just mirror one of your statements. However, what I would suggest you do then is only pop in the unit prices that are going to be regular payments. So your global sum, for example, doctors, partners, superannuation deductions, put those figures in. Because what you don't want to do is, or what you can do if you want, if you mirrored that kind of exact statement, you'll have all the wrong figures on there. So if I go into invoices, back to invoices, sorry, and I go into my repeating box, this is one that we created earlier. So essentially what I've done is I've created a repeated invoice to repeat every month. We want to repeat it as a draft invoice because we don't want it approving, because you'll be approving the wrong figure. So if I open my repeated invoice, you can see it once every month. I'm going to change that to the couple of days after the invoice date. So again, this is fully editable. Once you've created a repeated invoice, there's no reason you can't go in and just edit that. For example, if your global sum figure changes for that particular quarter, you can change that figure. But you'll see here what I have done, I've clicked Save as Draft. Now that's important because if you approve that figure, you're approving the wrong figure, which means you then have to go and edit the invoice once it's been approved. And if you forget to do that or something like that, you might get into a little bit of difficulty. But you can see what I've tried to do here. I've said the global sum, I've put my figure in. Quantity will always be 1. And then your account is where you're going to post that from your chart of accounts. So what I've said to here is, right, my global sum for this quarter is going to be the same every month. So I'm going to put my figure in there. My doctors, my partner superannuations, they're going to be the same. I'm going to put them figures in, and my aspiration. However, I know that I'm going to get a lot of enhanced services on every statement, and they're going to change. Those figures are going to change every month. So I've just put 0 in there, which basically means you don't have to keep creating everything. All you can do is, right, this month, pneumococcal was that, my child immunizations was so on, and you just edit it as you go along. Okay. That's your repeating invoice. What then happens if we go to our dashboard? Once you've saved that invoice that you've set up will repeat every single month, okay, for that amount. So if you've set it up for like a £70,000 or something like that, that amount will repeat every month, but it will repeat in your draft invoices, okay? To get them into your awaiting payment, you simply click onto your draft invoice on your invoices owed to you, open up the particular month that you want to look at, and edit it so it matches your PCSE statement. And you can go down here now and you can add lines. So if I was to put in here, for example, health checks 300, and it automatically brings up, or you can type in if it brings up the wrong one, and it will add it as many lines as you want on there. That's absolutely fine. And again, remember, if you are raising any type of invoice, that then needs approving. You will not approve and email this because you're not emailing it to anybody, but you will have to approve it. All right. Once you've approved it, it will then sit in awaiting payment. Okay. Sorry, I'll just take you back one quick step. Before you approve that, what you can do, if you've downloaded your expanded PDF of your PCSE statement, you can then attach it next to this breakdown. So those, especially for your accountant at year end, that paperwork is then sat on Xero. You're not having to print anything off. You're not having to file anything. You're not having to send them. I know we can have access. We have access to PCSE for all our clients, so we can see that. But it just makes life a little bit easier for you as well in terms of the paperwork sat next to your invoice on Xero as well, and you can just check them. You know, we all know what it's like in terms of pension deductions. You know, the mistakes are made quite often, aren't they? Unfortunately, and this gives you a way of checking them, and you can clearly see, oh, doctor hasn't had any pension deductions this month, and your paperwork sat there, and it can, you know, clarify what you're thinking. So once you've approved that invoice, that will then sit on your dashboard in basically awaiting payment. So if I click on here, we can see we've got an amount at the bottom here, awaiting payment of 76,275.89. That's a PCSE. So that was a repeated invoice that we opened in draft, we edited, so it matched our PCSE statement for that month, and we approved it. And that is now sat in there, okay? However, unless you've received that as one figure, Xero won't be able to match that in the reconcile for you. So if you did receive all that figure as one amount into your bank, then absolutely Xero will match that up in green. But on this occasion, it can't. So essentially what you've done, you've raised an invoice for a certain amount of money, and you've been paid in 2 installments, essentially is what's happened there, hasn't it? And you can see here what we've got, the 2 figures that have been received that relate to your invoice. Really simple to reconcile. What you do, click into find a match. find the invoice it relates to here. That's the total invoice. Tick your little box. You get the option now that says split. And what we're saying is we're going to part pay the total invoice with this figure. So you can see you got your balance, your part payment, and then what's remaining. Now the remaining amount should be the additional payment that you've received in your bank. Okay, if it isn't, the likelihood is you've had an additional amount added onto remittance that doesn't show on your PCSE statement. And that's when you may have to either edit your invoice or add an additional invoice. But at this point, what we want to do, we want to split that. It matches in green, Xero's happy with that, so we can okay it and confirm. And what we're left with is the additional amount that comes in. If we click find and match, you should see 432 is what's remaining. You tick that, you click OK, and you click confirm. And what you've done there is you've reconciled that PCSE statement. So the key to that, I guess, is your repeating invoice. Set that up as a template, and then all you're doing is amending one or two figures every month to match the statement that you've received, and then you go and find a match and reconcile the two. So it's quite quick, and it helps you kind of keep track of what's going on, and it stops you having to break things down if you're using the standard version. Kelsey touched on earlier, if you're using a basic version of Xero and you're using remember previous entries, it's a similar kind of scenario where the breakdown will be there for you, but you still need to add and delete lines and make changes. But it does make life a little bit easier rather than just completely reinventing the wheel every month and having to break down that statement. So hopefully, I know it's all very quick, but as I say, there will be questions, and if you do need anything, please feel free to get in touch. And that's basically what I was going to cover with your invoices. What I did want to touch on as well was your bills. And now I know not everybody uses the bills on Xero. Lots of GP practices pay the same suppliers consistently, and you may have standing orders and direct debits set up. And I think that your bank rule situation there will help with that in terms of reconciling. But it may be that you do want to track that money, and you do have a couple of options to do that. Okay. If you want to raise just a bog standard, very quick bill, the exact same process, new bill, off dashboard, who it's going to, what it is. You don't have to match the entire invoice that you've received, quantity one, unit price, whatever that is, and then whatever that kind of relates to, the date of that bill. Again, you can pop in. If you're going to raise bills to sit on Xero for a later payment date because you want to do a payment run, you can just put them all to the same date, which then prompts you to say, right, I've got all these to do a payment run. But just remember that you then approve that. You can also, again, attach, drag and drop. If you've got some paperwork and an invoice, you can drag and drop that into this page here and approve it. And then basically what you would then do, that will sit in awaiting payment. Once you've paid that money, it will obviously deduct from your bank account. You go into reconcile. And if it's a one-off payment, Xero will more than likely match that in green. And you can just clear that out in here. It'll be in green, and you can clear that amount out. It will kind of, as I say, find that for you. There is also another way to raise a bill, which is quite handy, because obviously a lot of us now, we are digital, with paper bills aren't so common. And you'll be getting emailed. You'll be getting lots of emails, I guess, in terms of saying, here's your invoice for this bill needs paying, etc. So rather than raising on Xero, clicking new bill and dragging and dropping and opening that, you do have an option where you can automate your billing. So under business, I'm going to go into bills to pay. And again, this takes you to the overview of bills. So it's, everything that you've paid, everything that's awaiting payment, and all your drafts. But you can see here, you've got automate bill entry. If we click on that, it generates a unique billing email address to your Xero license. Okay. If you were to copy that billing email and paste it into so let's say Viking, for example, or Williams Medical Supplies, email you an invoice. If you were to copy that and forward that email to this billing address, Xero will automatically generate a draft bill for you based on the information within the invoice, and it will also attach that invoice to the bill. So it makes your life a lot easier in terms of that. And all you then have to do, you just have to go into it and make sure that it's picked up all the lines, because it won't always pick everything up. You might have to populate an account, for example. But what it will try and do is pick up where it's from, the date, the due date, and the reference on that invoice. And it will also attach the paperwork to that for you. Once you're happy with that, you click approve and you go and do those processes again. You go into reconcile and you match them. So if you are getting a lot of automated bills via email, use that functionality. Not only does it create the bill for you, it attaches a paperwork for you as well. And it sits then, once you've approved it, in awaiting payment. And then, as I say, you go and reconcile that. Okay. Obviously, you know, if you are using invoices and bills, then I expect that you're on Xero pretty much every day and you're managing that. Those of you that aren't using invoices and bills, you might be on weekly, just to reconcile that data out. Try and get your paperwork into Xero. It's really, really simple. As I say, you can attach individually. What you do also have on your drop down from your name, you have files, which is the Xero file library. So if I was to go into there, again, this is somewhere where you can drag and drop and pop your paperwork into an inbox, or you can create subfolders there. Again, for your accountant at year end, it just makes the process so much easier. The information's available, it's quick. We can turn around your year end accounts a little sooner should everything be available there. Okay. So I encourage you, if you can. That's not to say you don't need to keep paperwork in the office. You can keep your folders and things like that. That's absolutely fine. But from a point of view, from your accountant's point of view, at year end, try and become more streamlined and more digital in that way. Either that's by attaching your invoices and your bills to the individual payments, or getting them into Xero. Okay. But in terms of what we wanted to cover today, I think that's pretty much it. Quite happy to answer some questions, and we've got a little bit of time left. So if you do have some questions, quite happy to answer them. I think Laura is going to go through one or two of them, but feel free to ask anything. If we can't get to it today, we will absolutely come back to you.
Thanks, Lee. That's really, and Kelsey, that was really helpful as ever. So thank you. There have been quite a few questions, and I've got quite the team sitting here to be fair, everyone. When Lee's presenting, Kelsey's trying to answer questions and vice versa. So we have covered some of those already. I wanted just to pick up a couple more. We've got maybe just under 5 minutes left. I know Kelsey's answered this one, but I think it'd be good just to sort of comment on it as well. And that was, we had a question about whether you could set up an automated late payment reminder if a bill was sort of over 30 days unpaid. Don't know who wants to take that one.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. Yeah, so essentially when you set up your billing, you give basically what will happen if we go, let me open, am I still sharing my screen? Yeah, perfect. So essentially what will happen when you raise a bill, you will give it a date that bill is due. So if you raise it on that date and the due date, it goes over that due date, it will automatically populate into overdue. So what you can then do, you will know exactly when you need to then chase it, think, actually, I'm overdue on that bill. That bill then needs paying, it prompts you. So if you look at your dashboard, it will be sat there in red, essentially. So anything in red on here, then you probably need to be thinking, actually, I need to get onto these. And that gives you that kind of prompt in terms of paying that bill.
Thank you, Lee. Good. And just picking up on another one, there's been a couple of messages on this, and we are talking about unreconciled balances. So Katie had popped a message in the chat about the bank balance not reconciling with Xero and having difficulty actually just getting that cleared because transactions related to previous periods. So I don't know if one of you could maybe help with that one.
So Lee, could you be my
Oh, sorry, I'm sharing the screen, aren't I?
So basically, if you want to so I think Kate, you'd said about your accounts were basically locked for the year. So basically what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to unlock those accounts. So if you go to Lee, where yours says GP demonstrations on the left hand side, and then we then want to go to settings, and then from here we then want to go to looking for advanced settings. And then if we then just scroll down a little bit, there's then these conversion balances. So then what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to open them up, and then we're essentially just wanting to unlock the balances. Once we then unlock the balances, we can then go back and adjust the amounts for that year. However, if you've got that box text that's got your locked balances, you can't then adjust for previous year entries, because obviously everything's locked and good to go. And if we then unlock it, then we can then adjust for previous years. So hopefully that should help.
Thank you, Kelsey. That's helpful. We've actually had lots of questions this morning, and unfortunately we're not going to have time to answer all of these. So what we will do is we will come back to you individually on your questions if we haven't been able to cover these live. If you had a question that you've not yet posted, just get in touch with any of us after the event. We do run these regularly. We're always interested to know if there are other aspects of Xero that you would like us to cover on future webinars. So please let us know in the sort of feedback email that you'll probably get from us as well. Let us know if there's anything else that we can cover that would help you. And I think I'm probably going to wrap it up at that, because I know that nobody likes to overrun. I know we've all got busy days. I just want to thank you all so much for joining and staying with us. We actually haven't lost anyone during the course of this, which is possibly a first. So thank you for staying with us. We really appreciate it. I say we will get back in touch, and have a great day.